Hi, how are you? Today we're going to talk about modifiers. What is a modifier? Well, it's a word, phrase, or even a full clause that provides additional information about another word, phrase, or clause within a sentence. Modifiers can either be adjectives or adverbs and need to be positioned before pre-modifiers or after the information that they modify. Modifiers can be single words or whole phrases. Here are some examples of sentences that contain modifiers. They went on a family vacation. That's pretty straightforward. The single word family, in this case an adjective, modifies vacation. And the student who sits in the front row loves to read. Well, in that sentence, the phrase who sits in the front row modifies student. So we know which student we're referring to. Sometimes modifiers are used in unintended or humorous ways. Let's say you are driving into San Francisco and you want to comment on how cool the Golden Gate Bridge looks. You might say or write, driving into the bay, the bridge looked marvelous. Well, that sounds okay at first glance, but let's take a closer look at this sentence. What does driving into the bay modify? We know that a modifier has to be either directly before or after the information it modifies. It needs to be right next to it. So the phrase driving into the bay actually modifies the bridge in the sentence. Huh? The bridge is driving into the bay? Well, that doesn't make much sense. What you've got here is called a dangling modifier, which gets its name because it dangles in the sentence or just hangs there without actually modifying anything. So to correct it, we need to add the subject you intend to modify. Driving into the bay, we thought the bridge looked marvelous. Now, this makes sense because we are the ones driving into the bay. We have added a subject and it is no longer dangling there. It has something to modify, something it applies to. Here are some more examples. After finishing my dinner, the waitress offered to bring out the dessert tray. The waitress ate your dinner? Well, I hope she's not going to charge you. With a grunt of disapproval, the newspaper was thrown on the table. Your newspaper grunted at you? How rude. Driving home late last night, a deer suddenly appeared in our headlights. Well, I hope the deer wasn't driving. What you mean is more like what's going on in this kind of terrifying picture. You get the idea, so let's fix these bad boys. We need to add the subjects. We need to make sure the modifiers are not dangling, but they actually appear right where they belong, right next to a subject. After I finished my dinner, the waitress offered to bring out the dessert tray. Now that this first clause has a subject, we don't need to have a subject that also applies to the waitress offered because we have a full clause and another full clause after it. With a grunt of disapproval, Janice threw the newspaper on the table. Janice is the one grunting because she is not happy with something she read in the newspaper. And then driving home late last night, we saw a deer suddenly appear in our headlights. Very much like the Golden Gate Bridge example. Now, the second type of modifiers we will discuss are called misplaced modifier. The difference is misplaced modifiers do apply to something in the sentence, but they're in the wrong place. They're not dangling because they are supposed to match up with something in there, but they're not in the right position. For example, the server brought rolls to the businessman that were well buttered. The phrase well buttered appears directly after the businessman. So does this mean the men were salty and slippery with butter? I hope not. What needs to happen is that modifier has to be repositioned so that it appears directly next to the subject it modifies. The server brought well-buttered rolls to the businessman. Now it's clear in literal that the rolls are what is well-buttered. Here are some more examples. Dressed in a diaper and drooling, Grandpa read a book to his granddaughter. Grandpa may in fact be in a diaper and drooling, but I'm guessing the writer was referring to the baby. So the corrected version might be Grandpa read a book to his granddaughter who was dressed in a diaper and drooling. So now we've repositioned that modifier to be clearly right next to this pronoun referring to granddaughter. And I know that's a boy baby, but I love Boss Baby. If you guys haven't seen Boss Baby, I mean, I am talking to college students. I get that. But Boss Baby is very funny. It's one of my favorite movies that my kids watch. I don't mind having it on in the background. Anyway, another example. On her way home, Allison found a silver woman's watch. Well, that must be one shiny woman. You get it? Because the silver woman, she's silver. Silver's kind of shiny. So the corrected version, on her way home, Allison found a woman's silver watch. Just realized it's missing punctuation here. I don't like that. Allison found a woman's silver watch. The silver is now right before watch. And taken literally, there's no way this could apply to woman anymore. Silver is an adjective that applies to watch. So with misplaced modifiers, it's a matter of repositioning. Squinting modifiers is our third type of modifier we will discuss. And a squinting modifier gets its name because it's unclear which part of the sentence the word intends to modify. This makes the sentence ambiguous. That word means unclear. The meaning is not apparent, uncertain about what it means. The modifier, in other words, is squinting, looking at two phrases, not sure of which one it applies to. For example, getting married quickly changes your way of life. Well, does the word quickly modify getting married or changes your way of life? We simply don't know. Just from reading the sentence alone, it's not clear. So what needs to happen is the sentence should be rewritten so that the modifier and subject are clear. And you can rewrite this any number of ways, of course, as long as that ambiguity or that uncertainty is clarified. Getting married too fast will change your way of life. So that's one meaning of the sentence that quickly applies to getting married. Or getting married changes your way of life quickly. So getting married after any amount of time together will change your way of life very fast. And I think both of those are true. Some more examples of squinting modifiers. She told her nephew eventually the dog would have to go back to its owner. Does eventually apply to told or would have to go back? We don't know. So we can rewrite this as eventually she told her nephew the dog would have to go back to its owner, meaning after a certain amount of time, she finally told her nephew that the dog has to go back to its owner. Or she told her nephew that eventually the dog would have to go back to its owner, saying that at some point in time, you're going to have to return this dog. And then another one, public speakers who pause briefly refocus the audience, or their audience. Does briefly apply to pause or refocus? You can rephrase this as taking brief pauses when giving a speech can refocus the audience. So we took the taking brief pauses. That is a rewrite. We're just changing the words around a little bit. The meaning is clarified though, that brief pauses are what refocuses the audience. And that's it. I leave you with a modifier meme and a message. If you care to read it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. I'm just going to leave the screen up here for a minute. No reason in particular. No reason at all. And that's going to do it for modifiers. Thanks for watching.